The Crooked Epic, 1, The End of Maniacal Madness, 6, Alex, The Cage, 6B, 1. It was late in the afternoon in Weir, and Father had not left his private study all day, striking his paltry noon lunchtime and a 3 o'clock latrine break. Whenever Ted was in the hallway, whether to eat a snack, grab water, or use the latrine, he would perk his ears and eyes around the stairway to the attic. Sometimes Ted heard the radio, but he was not sure if it was static from a misdialed broadcast station or if the police radio was on. Sometimes he would hear Christopher's voice on the phone or radio and be unsure which, or if it was the house phone line or his private business line. All of Ted's activities at his room's desk became exaggeratedly slow. Ted divided concentrating his attention on his studies or reading while secretly monitoring Father's presence. Treading in the hall, Christopher would seldomly speak to Ted, who would check to listen if he still had left the radio on up in his study in the attic. Chris would return and Ted would act with sincere innocence as though luck could become purified if remained incorruptible. When 3 o'clock had gone by and Ted had done nothing except sit and read all day, he exhaustedly decided to shift his focus from books and drawings to the weekly broadcast radio entertainment. Ted would try anything possible to keep his mind from dwelling on the inevitably unchangeable distance from his lost brother and fill his absence with simple placidity. As Ted walked down the stairs, he thought he heard his father's footsteps coming from the attic behind him, yet as he slowed his movements' rhythms, there was only floorboards lightly thumping above as Father paced and spoke in a garbled decibel on his phone. Downstairs, Ted walked into the den room and sat in the seat nearest the radio. Loneliness sunk into Ted's brain. He pushed his backbone against the seat, leaned his elbows against his knees, and looked at the radio dial. Pushing the dial over to an AM station and flicking the power on, Ted had not even heard enough notes to identify the melody broadcast when there was a ring from the phone in the dining room. After about 3 seconds of distracted listening, Ted straightened and turned the volume down quickly. Nobody had picked up the phone, so he yelled up the stairs, "Can I pick it up?" But nobody responded, and he assumed Father would answer the call, so he sat back and tried to hear him talking to the caller upstairs. Compulsively, Ted wanted to find out if it was one of their friends, but remembered how the recent events had disrupted the entire working dynamic of their family and social lives. Ted could do nothing to help his brother besides run away, and there was no escaping his conscience. Even as Ted turned the radio back on, he depressingly realized the rest of his life might be ruined. His thoughts drowned out the radio, and he was startled when he felt the hand on his shoulder. Not knowing whose it was, Ted spun his neck to the side and jumped in his chair, grabbing for the wrists. Ted's father stood with a serene smile. He was not new to high pressure and demanding times, yet the loss of his eldest child was a heavy burden too to shake off. Calmly, though, he said to him, "Alex's friends are all worried about him, us too. Jacob's family hasn't let him go outside today, which you know is surprisingly authoritative for Mr. Murphy." Standing and watching his reaction while Ted turned back off the dial and thought of how to respond, Father turned his gaze toward the front window. And Clark had gone missing since yesterday morning. Still, Ted did not know how he should react, but hearing about Clark's disappearance made him uncomfortable. Father probably did not realize his oversensitivity. It was not really until he walked out of the den room that Ted gave more thought to Clark's disappearance. It reminded him of Alex's attempt to rescue him from Barry Reeves, and he tried to think if there was some way to get through the cave to remove the rocks which blocked it all off. Before, Ted thought he was somewhat safe at home, but now he was significantly less optimistic about their safety, even together. The need for resolution became drastic, and it pressed much more parlous action to be strategized.